TW, happy birthday.
Well, thank you. I tell you, like I mentioned to you, when you get north of 40, it's like they come twice a year. I feel like I've already done this once this year, but and I'm really grateful, man.
Well, happy second 40th, whatever.
Yeah,
birthday.
That's right. Yeah. What did Ronald Reagan used to say? It's the 15th anniversary of my 25th birthday or something. Yeah, I'm 43.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for spending birthday with us.
It's good.
Hey, so real quickly, I want to tell you one of the things that I love about my job. Is I get to dive into. I get to go to crazy places, but I get to meet like all kinds of people, right? So I get to see, you name it, I see it. All walks of life of people I get to meet. But when I was here in Oklahoma, speaking at a conference, you and I were at the same conference. I got to say, I think you were like the first politician that I ran across, you know? So I wasn't sure whether to run or to embrace you. You'll be like, all right, here's this guy, right?
You should have ran.
Anyway, I got to tell you, so when I met you, I was just so impressed, you know, because it's like, I just didn't know what the whole politician, for whatever reason, I don't run in those circles, right? Obviously, right? And so when I met you, I was just so amazed with just kind of your, how personable you were and how warm and how genuinely engaged you were to like really want to hear my story. And I just remember leaving there just being like really, really impressed with you. So I'm glad that we met, and of course we've kept in touch, become friends and all that.
Can you believe that was 2014?
Was it that?
It's been almost 6-7 years now.
You were 27 at the time?
I was on that.
No, it's hard to believe that it's been that long though. So anyway, so all that to say, I love that we've developed this friendship and that we've gotten to keep in touch over the years. So here's the thing about that I'm so curious about. I don't know this whole politician world, okay? And you're much more than a politician, so forgive me, right? It's like just calling me a musician, right? You know, I'm more than that, maybe.
You're a lot more than a musician.
So anyhow, so this whole politician world, like it's such a mystery to me. So you're how old are you when you're 30? How old are you when you get?
When I first ran for office, I was 27 years old.
27 years old. All right. So what makes you run for politics at 27 years old?
You know, my thing, I'd been blessed, you know, raised with a wonderful family. Both my parents were state employees. Mom was a social worker, worked for DHS 30-something years. My dad was a teacher. He's a history teacher. And so they both were kind of service-oriented. So I always knew I kind of wanted to do something in the area of serving people. Our church home was a big impact on me. Bethlehem Baptist Church. I always tell people that's where I got my values from, was really that church. So I knew I wanted to do something serving people. I didn't know exactly what, like most kids, you know, you go to school, you go to college, not sure what you're going to do, what you want to do. After college, I decided to go to law school, only because, once again, I didn't know what I was going to do. But while I was applying for law school, I got a chance to work for an amazing guy, Congressman J.C. Watts. I actually worked for 2 members of Congress while I was going to law school. So I worked full-time during the day and then went to law school at night. And I think working for J.C., who is just one of the most honorable men I've ever met in my life. I mean, he's a family guy, he's a believer, he's a businessman. And at the time, he was the 4th ranking member of Congress.
Oh, wow.
And I got a chance to see him, you know, travel the country working for him and see what an impact his office had on people and what a difference it could make. And I think that's where I kind of got the bug. So it's a few years after working for him, where I decided, that may be something I want to do. And then a seat opened up back in Lawton, where I was from. My wife and I, we were living in Ada at the time. We were having a great life. She was pregnant with my daughter, and we decided to move back home and run for office for state representative.
I think that's super cool. So you're 27 at this time?
27, yeah.
Yeah. So you run for politics, right? So you're representative?
I was state representative.
I'm sorry.
I was state representative for 8 years, and those last 2 years of being state representative, I was Speaker of the House.
All right. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, the youngest Speaker of the House?
I was the youngest in state history in the state of Oklahoma, and then at the time I was the youngest in the country for a while also. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was you know, and again, when you're doing it, you're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about what history will say about it. That's not your intent. That's not even your motive. But when you reflect on it, you think, wow, that, you know, the fact that you were able to to make a difference and do something that hadn't been done before, it's really a testament to God's grace, to be honest with you. I know my limitations, right? I know the real me. And so I know all the reasons why anybody would not want to vote for me.
Sure.
But the fact that there were people willing to entrust me with that sense of responsibility at that age, and it really made you want to step up and make them proud, and again, having, a church family. I always say, I had the parents that every kid deserves, parents who always made sure I knew I was their number one priority. But then not only that, I had a community of people that held me accountable, right? I knew there were 250 people in my church or so, 300, 350 a Sunday, who were expecting me to do something. Like they expected, they had invested in me, time, money, wisdom, and I knew that I owed a debt that I had to pay back, and public office seemed like a way to try to do that. So I was honored to get to do it. It was hard work. Running for office is hard. Certainly serving is difficult, but it was a privilege of a lifetime.
I was having a conversation yesterday about there's something about being when you're thrown into the into the fire, right? That's when our growth just happens exponentially, because it's like you have to execute. Yeah. Otherwise it's going to be really bad. If I'm on TV and I don't execute, I mean, there's millions of people who are going to watch. It's going to be really, really embarrassing.
Yeah.
So, but my point is that it's crazy the amount of growth that happens just being thrown in the fire,
sure.
Right? And how you just fast track through this learning process.
My mom she had a saying she used to say. She said, "Bought sense is better than told sense." Like, people can tell you can learn about something abstract, or you can learn about it theoretically, but there's no replacement for hands-on, hand-to-hand combat. I mean, it's the only way to get those stripes, those bruises, those mistakes. I mean, that's really where lessons come from. It's not in the victories where lessons come. The victories come in defeat, and that's when you get better.
Well, let me ask you this. So speaking of defeat,
yeah.
what's your internal mantra, the internal thing that you say to yourself, or I don't know, that thing to kind of get back up again, right? So for me, trying to make it in music, or just in life in general, when you just feel beat down, there's certain things where I just have to remind myself of something, whatever it is, that says, to get up and get going again. Is there anything like that with you that?
For sure. A couple of things come to mind that, I kind of rehearse in my head, over and over again, particularly in those moments. Number one, remember, life is about seasons. I mean, we just went through last week in Oklahoma. Literally, last week it was negative 14 degrees in Oklahoma. 7 days later, it was north of 70 degrees. Maybe it's the Oklahoma spirit, but the reality is seasons change. And so anytime I find myself in an uncomfortable season, always know it's not going to be that way forever. And then the second thing that I think I rehearse in my mind when I think about challenges is something my mom, going back to Mom, she was a wise woman, was just her saying that nothing beats a failure but a trier. Just meaning that if you don't try it, you certainly can't excel and win at it. And the only way you can beat failure is to try. And so I've never been afraid to try something. I have it's not that I'm unfiltered, or I have no sense of or a carefree kind of cavalier attitude. It's not that at all. I'm thoughtful about things, but fear just doesn't. It's not a driving motivator for me. And I'm not telling you I don't get fearful. I do get fearful.
Sure, I get it.
I have fears and trepidations, but I try to be self-aware of, okay, why am I reacting this way? And what I figured out, and I say this to my employees at work all the time, there are only two emotions that motivate people, in my opinion. One is love, and the other is fear. And when you feel yourself, or you see other people acting weird, or they're acting out, or they're lashing out, or they're having unpleasant moments, it's been my experience that it's almost always fear that's driving it. And if you can peel away the layers and figure out, okay, what is it that you're really afraid of? And if you can own it, speak to it, speak against it, man, you can start moving mountains. So I think it's that, just trying not to operate in fear, recognizing where fear comes from, and facing it head on. That's all I know to do.
To face that fear, I think that's the biggest accomplishment I think, you know what I mean? Because I know for me, I don't let fear dictate how I live. I think you and I are very much the same in that we're both fearless, right? We're both, I get a crazy idea, crazy thought, you know, and I go pursue it. Yeah. It's not that I'm just careless. It's just that I think, you know what, why not try, right? So sure. For years, you know, I used to, maybe I'd have a great idea or a thing that I wanted to pursue. And while I think this is healthy and it is good, and I do this still, you know, this thing about like just kind of want to wait, see kind of, God, what do you think? Yeah. Right? God, you lead the way. Should I do this? Should I not do that? Right? Yeah. And I think there's a healthy amount of that. And not to make this a faith talk, right? But, sure. But then I discovered this thing that was really freeing for me, which was, you know, there's a verse that talks about, you know, God will give you the desires of your heart, right? And I'm not saying this is scripturally what it means or anything, right? But maybe, you know, it used to be that these are the things I want, so God will give it to me, right? But maybe it's not that. Maybe it's that God will give you the things and that actually He'll give you those desires, right? So what I mean by that is I think maybe there's a reason why this idea looks interesting to me. Maybe there's a reason why this inspires me, right? Maybe because God has created me and wired me in a certain way for certain things to excite me.
No, there's no doubt. I think, you know, that worldview, that biblical worldview, it actually creates in you a sense of urgency, right? Number one, you know you were created. Well, somebody takes the time to create you. They obviously created you for a purpose. Well, even if you don't know exactly what that purpose is, knowing that you have one, it makes you want to pursue it, and also recognizing that the time we have here is finite. I mean, I'm not going to be here forever. You know, I probably have maybe more years behind me than I have in front of me, right? But while I'm here, I know there are things that I was created to do, and I don't want to leave any of it on the table, man. I don't want to leave any of it on the field. And when it's my time to go, I want to know that I've done all I can to make a difference with the gifts that I have, not with Ed's gifts, not with anybody else's gifts, but with the gifts that TW's been blessed with. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Better, right?
I agree. So literally had a conversation yesterday about Oklahoma, right? And this thing about what is Oklahoma, how does Oklahoma feel as far as like someone who's coming in kind of from the outside. And I talked about how Oklahoma has this kind of a genuine warmth to it, right? And so the question was, does that warmth, you know, where you feel welcome and embraced, does it breed creativity? And I think it does, right? Because I think when you feel that warmth, when you feel welcome, when you feel received, like what you're doing with your bank, with new employees, you kind of have that freedom to feel vulnerable, to say, to go after those things, and it kind of removes that fear of failure because you feel received, right? And you feel it gives you that freedom to be able to just go for it and know that there's a nurturing environment around you.
No doubt. I mean, it's really, and what I hear you speaking to there, Ed, is validation, right? People want to be validated in their person, in their gifts and their talents, and it's no different when you go visit someone's home, right? When you're there, you're staying overnight, you know, depending on how hospitable they are to you, it's all about their hospitality. They're not going to get the genuine you until, you know, they show you the red carpet, and it's okay to go in the refrigerator. It's okay, you know, to leave a towel hanging around. Then they get the real you, and then that's where the intimacy happens. That's where the exchange of ideas happens. And I think on a macro level, it's exactly the same. And you're right. I think Oklahoma does that as well as anybody, especially with the history that Oklahoma has. We're such a resilient state. I mean, you think about, there's not a state in the union that's ever had as much boom and bust as Oklahoma. I mean, we've had moments of extraordinary wealth. You know, at one point, Tulsa was the oil capital of the world. We were the Saudi Arabia of the world. You still see, you know, vestiges of that heritage here. But the reality is, most of our time as a state, we've been extremely poor. You know, we harsh weather conditions. You know, if you live in the Panhandle, you've seen all types of Dust Bowl experiences, and you've had all types of you know, social ills that have plagued our state. But we're still here. We've managed to make it work, and that sense of resiliency coupled with that hospitality you're talking about, I think it's a potent recipe.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's very well said.
Yeah.
That's really good. I love that. All right, I want to back way up real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You and I yesterday, or a couple days ago, you and I were talking, and you and I were talking about your grandparents.
Yeah.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong. You were talking about parents growing up in segregation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Didn't know
yeah.
how poor they didn't know how poor they were.
Right.
Right. You can relate to this as a parent. Like I wonder, like, what they must think when they look at you,
Yeah.
right? Because they know, like, it's just like me. Like, there's a thing about me being on stage and just thinking about where I came from, you know, and just as a parent, I just think they must look at you and go like, how in the world? This is amazing. Like, look at this. Look how far our boy's gone.
Yeah.
You know.
I mentioned how special my parents are, and I got to tell you, like, the amazing thing about them is they didn't wait until that type of moment to have that self. Like, they were always that way. Like, everything I did, whether I was, becoming student body president or whatever it was, they always. So, or if I wasn't winning, right, they still made me feel validated and all that. But on that day, obviously that was special because it's so public, and they had been so involved in the race too. I mean, when you run for office, the whole family, it's a family affair, and so there was a sense of high five moment and all that. But I'll give you an example of kind of what that meant. I remember the day that I was sworn in as Speaker of the House. I'd been up all night practicing the speech, doing all that stuff that you do. And my wife and my kids, my kids were really young then. My son was 2 or 3 and my daughter was 5 or 6. So they were young, and my wife was doing what she does best, keeping them looking prim and proper and poised, and while they're about on the brink of falling apart, as
That's
kids
hard
do.
to do. I've
Oh,
watched
it is.
it many times.
And she does it with as much grace as anybody I've ever seen. But I remember walking into that chamber and seeing my picture on the wall. I haven't paid attention because every Speaker of the House is on the wall. And of course my picture looks very different than everybody else's picture, right? In the state. And it wasn't an ego thing. It wasn't that at all, but it did occur to me. I remember walking in and seeing it and thinking, wow, never again will someone that looks like me walk in this building and not see someone that looks like them. That's amazing. I also thought about what this must mean to my parents. They grew up in a segregated Oklahoma. One in Lawton, Oklahoma, one in the northeast part of the state, Muskogee, Oklahoma. And for them to get to witness that, they remember separate water fountains. They remember, segregated schools. That's a part of their story. But it's a very different story for me and then for my kids. And I'll give you, so fast forward, I remember after I'd left office, my son, his school took a trip to the state capitol. He wanted me to go, and I went with him. It was my first time returning to the Capitol after being out of office, after being there for so many years. And I remember walking into the chamber, and he wanted to get a picture under my picture. So the picture's still hanging. He wanted to get it, and I just remember thinking then, the America and the Oklahoma that he inherited is so different than the one my parents inherited, the one I inherited. The reality for him and my daughter, they know about. At the time we had a woman governor of the state. That's normal to them. We've had an African American president before. That's just part of their world. They don't know anything different. Their dad, African American Chickasaw, Speaker of the House. That's all they know, right? Now they need to know the history that we haven't always been there. There's a way, there's a story, there is a legacy of how we got to these moments. And they need to know that history.
Sure.
But I'm proud that the story that they will tell and pass on to their kids is much different than the one that my parents or even myself inherited. So,
That's beautiful. I love that. Recently, you reached out to me about this idea. This guitar player who lives far away in Nashville.
Yeah.
And talk to me about this thing that was stirring inside of you, and kind of this vision of something that you wanted to do. As a banker, or a message that you felt was important to communicate?
Well, our bank is so unique, right? We're wholly owned by the Chickasaw Nation. It was Governor Bill Tubby, visionary leader, who decided that we needed a bank in Oklahoma that also understood kind of the tribal needs, the Native American community needs, but it was also a bank to everybody, that banked everyone. And so for me to get to have the privilege to lead that organization, I take it very seriously. I'm a Chickasaw. My kids are Chickasaw. My wife is a wannabe Chickasaw. But the responsibility and the privilege of leading that organization, I take it very seriously. It's the thrill of a lifetime to get to do it. And what I know is the value system of the Chickasaw people is really about community. And our bank has a great heritage. Governor Anatubby started the bank over 15 years ago, and we've got a great heritage of being great community partners. But we hadn't always done a good job as a bank of telling that story. Not many people know about the philanthropic work that the bank has done. Historically, helping build wells in Africa and supporting local, community efforts. The community, I don't think, really knew that story, and so
you're doing it quietly behind the scenes.
We've always done it, and that's kind of and honestly, that's a characteristic of Native Americans. Native Americans are very modest people, and they don't go out and tell it. Well, I think that story needs to be told, and so what I wanted to do was I know the power of storytelling. I've got a somewhat of a creative flair. I'm married to my wife is a writer. Both my kids are creative, and all creativity really is in my opinion, is it's storytelling, and finding the venue to tell the story is great. And so I started thinking about literally who are people that I know that are storytellers, who are people that I know who are storytellers. And interestingly enough, you were involved in a tour at the time called Storyteller. And,
Interesting.
And I remember seeing a poster for it, and I thought, or maybe I saw a post or I saw something. Where you were in front of the poster, the Carrie Underwood Storyteller Tour, and I thought, it's a storyteller.
Amazing.
He'd be great. And so I thought, well, let's find people that we know, that I know, who get storytelling, because it's an art to it, right? Not everybody does it the same way, and how do you do that? And so I didn't have a fleshed out plan of how to do that, but I thought, well, if I get the right people on board, we can start telling that story. And then we hired some great people like Hunter Paul, who's leading our marketing effort. He's a storyteller himself, having done some work out in California. And so I feel like I've got the right team. I'll always know, if I don't have a lot of gifts and talents, Ed, the one that I do have though, is I know how to put good teams together. I know how to find people who have a gifting and to empower them to use their gift. And so that's why I reached out to you. That's why I'm so excited that you agreed to be a part and to help us with our effort. It's exciting for me. The other piece I would say about why I reached out to you is I know you have a heart for mentorship. And when we talk about the art of giving and what it means to be a good corporate citizen like Chickasaw Community Bank is, we're also interested in how do we reach back and pour into people, because so many have poured into us. And so I know that's already something that's near and dear to your heart, and we're looking for ways that we can find partners, that we can find those individuals that we can share our expertise, share our gifts with, so that they can do exactly what we've done. When you've been blessed with an amazing community and you've had that support like I had back home in church, or you've got a great work family, or your own inner circle that's supporting you, the next step to that, your obligation, if you will, is you've got to reach back and find somebody else to pour into. And so that's also part of why I reached out to you, is because we knew you already had a heart for doing that, and you could help us with that endeavor.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And you're right. I mean, mentoring obviously is very dear to my heart because of, just amazing mentors that I've had in my life.
That was actually the part of your story that I remember it well, that I went home and told my wife about how you had someone in your life who, didn't necessarily, you didn't ask them to be, they didn't agree to be. They just wound up being that stable force in your life, that male figure who did what they were doing every day. They weren't necessarily doing something extraordinary every day. They were just, being who they were and what that meant to you. And that was a part of your story that I remembered so well.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful thing when somebody just shows up, right? I talk about this a lot, the power of showing up, right? There's a power of showing up for the things you want to pursue, right? And there's the power of showing up for other people, because I had that experience it was a significant enough experience to realize that it's important for me now to show up for other people, right?
Yeah,
so when you reach out to me about this idea of hey, as a bank, we want to serve, we want to give back, and of course, naturally for me, my brain goes to, well, what better way than just to come alongside people and walk alongside people. I love that I get to be a part of that story. I love that this idea that that I get to go into this city, that's kind of like, this isn't my city, but I love that I get to come into this city and get to know these amazing people and find these amazing stories and tell these amazing stories of people who are just pursuing big ideas. Because I think it matters. I think it matters you pursue those ideas, and I think it matters that other people see other people's story and how they're pursuing their ideas, right? Because it's important to see that people are vulnerable, right? People are vulnerable enough to say, this is where I am. I may not like where I am, but I'm going to be vulnerable enough to go explore this new idea. And I really think at the core it's maybe about vulnerability.
That's good. As you were talking, I was thinking about the parallels between our home cities. Nashville people and Oklahoma City, you could swap them out and you'd never know the difference. I mean, there's a lot of similarity, and I think the similarity that's there is really they are both small states with big dreams, right? I mean, we're small states with big dreams, and frankly, when you think about, and I don't want to make this overly preachy, but when you think about whatever you're at, if you're successful, I don't care what your business is, whether you're a musician, you're a banker, you're a politician, you're an attorney, you're a teacher, really if you're good at it, what you're really good at is relationships.
That's right.
And when you think about it, from a spiritual sense, relationships are the most important thing there are. When you think about the whole New Testament, the Old Testament, it's all about a relationship, right? It's not about a religion. It's not about edicts of do this, thou shalt not, thou shalt. That's all part of it. But the real focus has always been on a relationship. And that's what this experience is about. And so being deliberate about the relationships, those that have less than you, those that have not had the same opportunities, man, what greater reward is there than that? And that's why we do what we do at Chickasaw Community Bank.
You as a bank recognize that people need more than just finances, right? They need more than finances to pursue big ideas and big dreams. But sometimes they need mentors, right?
Absolutely.
They need people to come alongside them, to walk alongside them, to build those relationships. Because sometimes when we build those relationships, not sometimes, every time, when you come alongside by somebody and you start to cultivate and build that relationship, then you get a chance to really to speak life and truth.
That's right.
Right, and to each other.
And it goes back full circle to what I talked about earlier. Really, what relationships do, they dispel fear and they embrace love, right? Mm-hmm. That's really what it is. And that's where the creativity comes, and where you find creativity, that's where you find people who are really happy and joyful about what they do. That's where fulfillment comes, is when you are walking in that gift that you have, which means you're doing something that you were designed to do. That's what we're talking about.
So we get on a phone call, we talk about this idea, and I have this random idea that says, hey, TW, here's the deal, right? So I'm going to come to town. I'm going to come to town. I'm literally just going to find people who want to dive into big ideas. And I'm going to walk alongside them, and I'm going to mentor them, right? And I'm going to connect them with other people, leaders, influencers in town, to walk alongside them as well, other mentors. To how do we take what it is, this idea, if it's just a nugget of an idea, or they're far along in the path and they've hit a wall. So how do we get them up to that next level?
Yeah.
And that's the goal, that's the vision of Launchpad, what we're doing, right? So when I presented this idea of I'll come to town, I'm gonna walk alongside people, and to be able to tell those stories. I want you to know that really excites me, because everything about that speaks to me who I am, right? So I'm a guitar player, ego, whatever, all these things. But at the very end of the day, my heart is about walking alongside people, right? Sure. That's where I'm at my best, right? And I'm not saying that's at my best, like, oh, isn't Ed great? That's where internally I'm at my best, right? That's when I'll walk away from a situation and go, man, I was made for that,
Yeah.
And so walking alongside people. And so I am truly honored that I get to come to this city, that I get to walk alongside people, that we get to, link up with people, and that we get to do this together, and through your network and just all the different leaders and influencers in this town, that we get to walk alongside people and just watch them chase big ideas. And really, that's all Launchpad is about, right? This thing that I said, we're going to create this thing called Launchpad because you know that people need more than just finances.
Sure.
So I applaud you for having the vision, right, as a leader of a big organization that says that we can do more. You know, you do more already, but we can get creative and explore some new ideas. So I'm excited to dive into Launchpad with you and your bank and tell amazing stories.
Well, we're honored, Ed. I mean, for you to lend your credibility, you've had an amazing story, traveling the world, you know, using your gift, you know, but also taking time to invest in people along the way. And so you've been walking along people as you've launched your dream, helping them launch their dream. And really, that's what we do at Chickasaw Community Bank. You know, the most rewarding thing about being a banker is we are on the front lines of helping people's dreams come true. Whether we're you know, helping them get their first home, or they're, you know, moving into their dream home, or they're downsizing after their kids are gone. They're getting a smaller home, or we're helping somebody start a business. I mean, we are there on the ground level of watching people's dreams come true. And really, Launchpad for us is just an extension of that. So we're honored that you would, you know, lend your credibility to us. And I'm excited to see, you know, what a difference this is going to make in our community.
Well, I'm excited as well. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Be fun.
All right. Thanks, TW.
Thanks, Ed.